Friends, in our last video, we have seen the first introductory part of the quantum mechanics. In this video, we are going to see the second part of the introduction. In the first part, we have seen that the light have a dual nature. That is, light is hypothesized to behave like particles in experiments like black body radiation and even in photoelectric effect. Then it was considered to act like waves in certain experiments like interference, diffraction, polarization and so on. So the double slit experiment explained the apparent nature of the light as it travels like waves and absorbs and gives off energy as series of particles. So these two are contradictory ideas. So in conclusion, the light was considered to have both the particle and wave nature. That is, light was previously considered as a particle, then as a wave. Now we have to consider as both in order to explain the black body radiation, interference and all the other experiments. So after this concept of dual nature of light, in 1924 a French physicist, Louis de Broglie, he put forth a hypothesis after his name, de Broglie hypothesis. This hypothesis was due to the question he asked about the matter. So if the radiation has the dual nature, then why not the matter? That was his question. So in asking so, he proposed the idea of matter waves. So why not the matter have a wave like propagation? So he proposed that idea of matter waves, that is, every matter is associated with a wave. So he gave the expression for the wavelength of the matter waves. It takes the form lambda is equal to h by p, where p is the momentum of the particle. By this relation, the wave and the particle nature of the matter waves are interrelated. So the existence of these matter waves were experimentally verified by the two experiments. They are Davison and Germer experiment and the G.P. Thomson experiment. Both of them used the electron diffraction to explain the existence of matter waves. So that is the case. If the beam of electrons found to undergone diffraction, then they have to be propagated in the form of a wave. That was the result we got out of the G.P. Thomson and Davison and Germer experiments. So the duality principle successfully removed the blockades, but at the cost of direct measurements. Because if you treat a same entity both as a wave and as a particle, then there comes the uncertainty in determining the role played by the entity there. So what we have to do is to sacrifice something in order to achieve something. So the indirect measurements are the only possible way of doing things. So we have to go for indirect measurements. In doing so, what are the methods, in what way we are going to have measurements in the indirect way. So if the direct measurement of physical quantities are hard to make, then the only thing we are left with is the indirect way of measuring things. Comes in the form of operations, mathematical operations. So by doing some operation, one can measure the required things. So that is the idea behind this indirect way of measuring things. So what was done is, their operations were done by exclusive operators for every physical quantity. That is, every physical quantity or every dynamical variable is associated with an operator. The realness of the physical quantities, that is, if we want to have a physical quantity, means that should be a real quantity. So in order to have the real physical quantity, operators we consider for these dynamical variables, they have to possess a special property. That is, these operators have to be Hermitian in nature, because only Hermitian operator can give a real eigenvalue. So that is the principle behind having the Hermitian operators. After having an operator, here we define a physical measurement in this equation form. We say a physical measurement is equivalent to solving the eigenvalue equation given here. That is, the operator A operating on a function f leaves us an eigenvalue lambda and the function itself. This is the eigenvalue equation. Here, as we said earlier, the operator A is a Hermitian operator. If A is Hermitian, then lambda is real in nature. So we can have that lambda eigenvalue as the observable, that is the value of physical quantity intended to measure. So mathematically speaking, this f is just a mathematical function regarding the physical quantity. So in quantum mechanics, we often dealt with these physical quantities only. They are displacement, or in other words, a position of the particle, or the momentum, time and energy. So these four quantities are often used in quantum mechanics in addition to other physical quantities. So angular momentum also has an equal place in quantum mechanics because of the spin and orbital angular momentum and things like that. We have to choose, or we have to have the appropriate Hermitian operators for these physical quantities. So for the position, we just have the same vector as the position vector as the operator, or the variable x in one dimension as a displacement or position operator. So regarding momentum, so we have this form for operator, that is minus IH cross del, where H cross is the Planck constant, H by 2 pi, and del is the differential operator, I dou by dou x plus j dou by dou y plus k dou by dou z in 3 dimensions. If you consider only the one-dimensional system, then we simply have dou by dou x only. So that is the momentum operator. The interesting thing here to look at is the differential nature of the operator. So it's a differential operator here for momentum. So for time, we have just the variable t as an operator. So for the energy, like momentum, it's also a differential operator, but here we are going to differentiate with respect to times. Differential operator for energy. We have two differential operators, one for spatial derivative and one time derivative for momentum and energy respectively. So after having these things, next we concentrate on the formulation after having the matter wave. So how we are going to proceed, that is the next question. What is the way of progression? So what is the how one can progress in knowing things or developing a new theory, because after having the dual nature, which is entirely new idea, so after having that new idea, so everything has to be formulated everything has to be formulated in a compact form so that the future generation can easily understand the things happened. That was the aim. So once the matter wave concept was hypothesized, then in order to study or in order to analyze, we need a central equation to represent the motion of matter waves. Because already for waves or electromagnetic waves or waves which we deal in optics, there we have one wave equation proposed by Huygens wave equation. But here we have operators. In Huygens wave, we have only a differential equation, second order partial differential equation. But in the quantum mechanics or in the wave mechanics, we have operators. So after the definition of the operators, so we have to obey or we have to satisfy the compatibility conditions also in order to have a meaningful equation. If that is the case, so what one has to do is we have to formulate one equation, so which is compatible compatible in all aspects, or which obeys or which satisfies the first principle of wave mechanics. So precisely, if you substitute the physical quantities for the operator, that is in the Huygens wave equation, which takes the form dou square u by dou x square, which is equal to k r 1 by c square, whatever it is, dou square u by dou t square. Then if you substitute the relevant or respective physical quantities, so if you take the derivative dou square by dou x square, then the respective quantities p square, the momentum square, square of the momentum. So if you substitute p square on the LHS, and for dou square by dou t square, one has to put e square. So after substitution, we are left with the incompatible expression, that is p square, which is equal to or which is proportional to e square. So which is not allowed, because in classical mechanics or in Hamilton formalism, so we know the total energy E, which we write in this form as p square by 2m plus v, where v is the potential energy of the system. So if you write like this, then E should be in line with the p square, not e square. So this Huygens equation is not compatible as far as our quantum mechanics is concerned, our operator things are concerned. So what Schrödinger, an Austrian physicist, in the year 1925 did was, he formulated the matter wave equation like this. That is, on the left hand side, we have a derivative, second order derivative, spatial derivative. On the right hand side, he had the first order time derivative. So in doing so, the compatibility condition also got satisfied. Just this formulation was considered okay and accepted. This was the accepted wave equation. So Erwin Schrödinger's equation, we simply call it as Schrödinger's time dependent equation. So it's given here. So it takes the form minus cross h square by 2m del square plus v into the wave function psi, which is equal to IH cross dou psi by dou t. So now it is interesting to see the bracketed quantity on the LHS, or the left hand side, is the total energy operator. So we call it as an Hamiltonian operator, as it's Hamiltonian of the system. So we write the equation in a compact form like this: H psi is equal to E psi, where E is the energy and H is the Hamiltonian operator. Psi we call this psi as the wave function. If the potential of the system is time independent, then one can easily deduce the time independent form of the Schrödinger equation. That is, if V is just V of r comma 0, that is, it is a function of only position, then we can write the time independent form of Schrödinger equation like this, where the psi of r now takes psi of r comma t now takes the form psi of r comma 0. So then by solving this equation, we can obtain the psi of r comma 0. Then after obtaining psi of r comma 0, one can write this entire wave function psi of r comma t as psi of r comma 0 into e power minus iet by cross h, where we call this psi of r comma 0 is the stationary state of the system, because there is no time involved in the potential, so we call it as a stationary state. No time is also involved in the wave function, so we call it as a stationary state. So after looking at the wave function psi, so one can conclude that it can be a complex function, and also we call it as wave function as it denotes the matter waves. So, and it contains all the information about the system concerned. So wave function is the central one because it contains all the system's information. So physically speaking, if you look at it very carefully, it just played the role of U in the case of Huygens equation, where we call this U as a displacement, or more specifically it is the amplitude of the wave. So by using the same terminology here, we write this psi, or we call this psi as the matter wave amplitude. So as such, psi is nothing but the matter wave amplitude. If we want to get meaningful quantity out of this psi, so we should not stop with just psi alone. So we have to make some better things. So psi mod psi square, that is psi star psi. So as we know, psi is a complex quantity, so psi star can be easily found, and psi star psi. So from the principle of complex numbers or complex functions, we know the psi star psi will give us a mod psi square, which is a positive value as well as a real value. So from this real value, so we can use the theory of probability, and if we match the psi square, mod psi square quantity with the probability quantity, so we can conclude that, which is nothing but the probability of finding the particle. It's just this psi square, mod psi square will give us the probability of finding the particle. So if you have mod psi square dx, then the probability of finding the particle in the region dx. So that is the meaning of this expression. So if mod psi square is the probability of finding the particle, then automatically it comes out that total value of the probability is equal to 1. Then we write integral minus infinity to plus infinity psi star psi d cube or the volume element, whatever you write, or dx. This is equal to 1 because the total probability cannot exceed the value of 1. So we call this condition as the normalization condition, as the total probability cannot exceed 1. So after having these conditions, so we write the function psi, that is the psi should be a single valued function. The psi should be continuous in the region concerned because we are relating it with the probability, so it should be continuous in the region, and there should not be any discontinuity in finding the particle in the region concerned. Additionally, we expect its derivatives should also be continuous because the equation contains the derivatives also. The first three are the admissibility conditions, and the last one is the boundary condition. So after having these conditions, if a function obeys these four conditions, then we can say such a function is a wave function. Otherwise, we call it is just an eigenfunction only. So the statement, all the wave functions are eigenfunctions, and the converse is not true. That means all eigenfunctions need not be wave functions. So other consequences of the duality principle are the uncertainty principle. So in 1927, Heisenberg he proposed that the canonically conjugate variables, they cannot be measured with infinite precision at the same time. He also gave the mathematical form of the uncertainty principle like this: delta x, delta px, where delta x and delta px are the errors or uncertainties in the position and the momentum respectively. So the product should be at least equal to the quantity cross h by 2. So if we take the classical picture, then delta x px is 0. But in quantum mechanics, though the Planck constant is having a very small quantity, 10 power minus 34 So even that small value is significant in the context of quantum mechanics. So that is the main thing one has to remember, and one has to point out about the quantum mechanics. Even this very smallest value, 10 power minus 34, is significant. So that is the thing. So if we write the other form of the uncertainty principle, then it takes the form delta T delta E, which is also greater than or equal to cross h by 2. Other things one has to know about these fundamentals of quantum mechanics is the commutation between the operators. So that is the commutation properties. As we see, the operators are Hermitian in nature. If you take the matrix multiplication, because they are similar to the matrices, these matrices should possess the non-commuting property. That is, if A and B are two matrices, then they need not commute with each other. That is, AB is not equal to BA. Generally speaking, A need not be equal to BA. In special cases, they may be equal. Usually speaking, AB not equal to BA. That is the non-commuting property of the matrices. So if you write commutation of operators, so we write AB minus BA, which is not equal to 0. So we just took the BA to the left hand side. So writing the left hand side in a compact form like this, that is square bracket A comma B, which is not equal to 0. So this square bracket, we call it as the commutator bracket. So that is the special name given to these brackets. It has some operator algebra built upon these commutation relationships. So the commutating bracket AB, which is equal to AB minus BA. Extending the same terminology to the operators. Suppose if we have position and momentum as two operators, then our commutation relationship between the two quantities, then we are end up with this relation x px commutator is equal to IH cross. So this is one of the interesting results of quantum mechanics, because these two operators x and px, they are not non-commuting operators. So we call these as canonically conjugate physical quantities. So if you take the quantity x as position, then px is nothing but the canonically conjugate momentum. So these two operators won't commute. So that is the identity we got in quantum mechanics. This is not so in classical mechanics. So after having quantities, equations and operators and other things in quantum mechanics, one can also relate the quantities in quantum mechanics with that of quantities in classical mechanics. That is, people tried to establish classical mechanics results inside the quantum mechanics, region of quantum mechanics itself. If we substitute the quantum number, that is n, so if n is very large or it tends to infinity, then one can have the classical mechanics results. Also, by putting the Planck constant h is equal to 0 or h approaching 0, one can obtain the classical mechanics. So that was given as correspondence principles. Want to go from quantum mechanics to classical mechanics. So by doing these two things, n going to infinity or h going to 0, so he can easily go to the classical picture. So that is the thing. But one cannot go in the other way. So from classical mechanics to quantum mechanics by any means. So the other thing is the expectation value of the operators. That is, if you have an operator A, then if you find the expectation value of the operator, then that expectation value will act as a classical physical quantity. So we define that expectation value like this, then that the quantity A within the triangular brackets is the expectation value or the average value of the operator. So these average values or expectation values obey the classical equations, classical mechanics equation, mdx by dt is equal to the momentum. So, or if you have dp by dt, that is the rate of change of momentum, which is equal to the force or the gradient of the potential. So, that is also one can call it as Ehrenfest theorem. So that is the second Ehrenfest theorem. This is the first one, and one can also write it as dp by dt, which is equal to grade v. So these x and p are quantum mechanical operators. So that is the beauty of the quantum mechanics. Therefore, one can conclude that quantum mechanics is the more general theory of nature. We can also say like this. If you see the field of application of this quantum mechanics, it is innumerable, one can say. So, in order to see some applications, the existence of the atomic physics or the subject atomic physics was developed only on the principles of this quantum mechanics. Similarly, molecular physics and all the spectroscopies are having quantum mechanics as fundamental backbone. The nuclear physics, condensed matter, nanophysics, whatever you call. So these things survived only because of the quantum mechanical ideas. So to cite some recent innovations of these quantum mechanics, one can say the quantum computers. They are the real child. This quantum computer is the real child of this quantum principles, wherein one can have parallel computing just automatic way. So the other useful innovation is the quantum dot televisions. Quantum dot televisions or quantum dot displays. They use the quantum dots to obtain photoluminescence, electroluminescence, and finally we have a quantum dot displays. So these are the two things I wanted to convey to applications or innovative technology, whatever you call. So this is one has to look at when you study or when you see the quantum mechanics. Thank you.